Today's presentation Today's presentation is radioactivity and indoor air quality, radon in schools and the impact on children. The speaker series is a project of the Education and Outreach Work Group for the Cancer and the Environment Network of Southwestern Pennsylvania, which is a network of organizations and individuals who are concerned about environmental chemicals and how they are contributing to our region's high rates of cancer. Cancer Bridges is co-sponsoring today's webinar. At Cancer Bridges, we provide support for those impacted by cancer, including counseling, support groups, health and wellness classes, family and youth activities, and much more. Our website can be found in the chat. If you happen to get disconnected during the webinar, please log back in. And if you need technical assistance, please send a message via the chat box to Andre Green. His name is listed below in the chat as well. Also, please enter your questions and comments in the chat box throughout the presentation. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available on both Cancer Bridges and SenseBA's websites. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Nathaniel Burden. Nate is a radon scientist and a radon national and state certified trainer. He is the chapter president of the American Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists and a board member of CR3, Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction. Nate has performed consulting, radon testing, and mitigation across the United States and Canada, and also for the Department of Defense in Germany and Italy. In 2021, Nate was awarded the Radon Heroes Award by the Conference of Radiation Control Program Directors. Nate was the former nuclear operator for the decommissioned Shippingport Atomic Power Station and Beaver Valley Nuclear Power Stations. Thank you, Nate, for being here today.
Thank you. And should I start now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction, Mia. This particular course is a call for action. Radon risks, basically the determinants for lung cancer and other health risks for school daycare centers, a built environment. So we'll talk more about what a built environment is, but I want to give you sort of like a beginning for radon, what it is, what it does, why we should be concerned for this. So this particular presentation, the purpose of this is to convince you that this is really a serious issue that needs to be addressed. That's me there from a previous Pennsylvania Department of Health, Office of Health Equity presentation that I did. Now, how do I convince you about the radon risks and that you should take action? That's the key thing that I want to make sure that we get across. Reading the signs of risk. Now, you look at that sign and trying to get a message out for radon and radioactivity in schools, and you wonder why this is not being done right now. Caution that this sign has sharp edges. Do not touch the edges of the sign. But the most important message is the bottom line. Also, the bridge is out. That's the most critical one. Sometimes it's the small details that count. So in starting this class, even before we talk about radon, if you remember last year, Missouri, October 2022, not that long ago, there was a school in Missouri, okay, the Jana Elementary School. Basically, it was a big deal. It had radioactive contamination in the ground around the school from previous activities, from people working with atomic energy and different things like that. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was involved in it, but radioactive contamination was detected in classrooms, the playground, really in the playground elsewhere at the Jana Elementary School. In St. Louis suburb of Florissant, according to a report last week by Boston Chemical Data Corporation. Now, this actually hit the news. It went across TV news and everywhere. But the bottom line, because there were parents, there were legislatures, they're all up in arms about this. How could this happen? So that was one of the issues that we wanted to be aware of. So the end result of that, because it was radioactive materials that were basically in the ground that potentially the children could be exposed to along with the teachers, it wasn't even that big of a deal, but they shut that school down overnight and it made national news across the board. And then when the actual U.S. Army Corps of Engineers went back and did a really detailed survey of the grounds of school and everything, they found out basically that they had found no radioactive contamination at the Missouri school that was shut down last month amid fears that nuclear materials from contaminated creek nearby had made its way into the school. Now, the key term is this school was shut down because of the term radioactive. In most people's minds, that creates a fear, it creates a concern, especially after watching all the movies about, Godzilla and everything else mutating and things like that. And when you think about radioactive and people being exposed to radioactivity, it can cause basically the concern is cancer. Whether that's in the skin, the organs, or whatever, radioactivity is bad. So the result was this went nationwide. Now, the point of this isn't radon gas is radioactive and in many schools and is naturally occurring. Shouldn't schools have the same reaction about this radioactive gas contaminant that is seeping and its radon decay products that is seeping into schools? Clear documentation, yet most schools in the United States, most schools in Pennsylvania specifically, and other states have not been tested for radon. It's not a big deal. One, radon is a radioactive gas that's invisible. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't smell it. Therefore, it doesn't activate the senses. So if it's not right there, you're never going to know that it's there. If it smelled like stinky socks or it looked like green mold or some sort of glowing gas coming out of the ground, even if it wasn't dangerous, we would want to do something about that. In my mind, that's a critical thing. So in Pennsylvania, it has one of the highest radon levels ever measured. That's a big deal. Some basic radon facts. Radon is produced by the breakdown of uranium in the soil. Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. Now, EPA says about 15% of homes in the US have unsafe, notice the word unsafe, radon levels. Why is it unsafe? Radon carries approximately 1,000 times the risk of death as any other EPA carcinogen, which would be asbestos, benzene. Our exposure to that is known as a human carcinogen. We'll talk more about that as we go. Radon exposure, again, to reduce lung cancer risk for all Pennsylvania schools and preschools should be the big deal. Now, for radon itself, about 11 to 15% of the 230,000 lung cancers that are, cases occur every year are attributable to radon, about 11 to 15%. So that's EPA estimates about 21,000 radon-induced lung cancer deaths occur annually. Radon is carcinogenic, we know that. Long-term exposure to radon can cause lung cancer. Pennsylvania, for instance, has the highest recorded levels in the country, specifically in Lehigh County and Allentown, PA. And remember, the actual level was 4.0 picocuries per liter. We measured 17,000 picocuries per liter in a residential property. And all the surrounding properties are easily over, we're running around 1,500 to 3,000 picocuries per liter. In Pennsylvania specifically, about 40% of the Pennsylvania homes have elevated radon levels. So radon is the #1 environmental cause of cancer deaths. Notice that statement. The #1 environmental cause of cancer deaths is naturally occurring. It's not man-made. Therefore, we can't sue God, okay? So that's another problem there, that this is not man-made like asbestos or lead-based paint or the different issues in the pipes or whatever. And it's the second cause of lung cancer deaths and the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. Again, the other thing with radon and being exposed to smoking, CDC has looked at it as that if you smoke and also are exposed to elevated high radon levels, your risk of getting lung cancer goes up by a factor of 10. So this now you've started getting a perception that this is really serious. Now, putting this in perspective, again, if it was 4 picocuries per liter, that's how we measure radon. The action level was 4. But if in a school or a house and you're breathing that in every day, that's like smoking 8 cigarettes per day. And if it was 8 or 10 picocuries per liter, it's like 20 cigarettes per day. So you begin to get an idea of what the risk is associated of breathing this invisible radioactive gas into your lungs. And if these are schools, since that's our main focus today of the built environment, that kids spend a lot of time in schools. So the equivalent would be that in a school with elevated radon levels, even if it's at 4 picocuries per liter, and that's not a safe level, that's the action level set by EPA. Even at levels below 4 picocuries per liter, you still can get radon-induced lung cancer. So the action level is 4.0 picocuries per liter. The World Health Organization, their action level is actually based on health-based epidemiology, and it's actually 2.7 picocuries per liter. There is a push of pushing EPA and overall to look at adopting the 2.7 picocuries per liter as opposed to the 4.0 picocuries per liter that was activated in 1988 by EPA. And basically EPA was mandated by Congress basically to assess, evaluate, and generate some sort of risk awareness to the public about radon, okay? And that's one of the things that EPA does and has been doing since 1988, okay? So just to give you an idea. And just another, and the amount of radiation in 4 picocuries per liter of radon is equivalent to that in 100 chest x-rays. Most hospitals only allow people to have no more than 4 chest x-rays, okay, or about 0.64 picocuries per liter each year. The picocuries per liter is a measurement of the radioactivity that is being emitted from a material quantity or a particular area. So radon, #1, is a carcinogen that causes lung cancer. It's a class A human carcinogen. That means that there is no doubt from all the data, we're looking at Hiroshima and Nagasaki when they dropped the atomic bomb, we have a lot of data seeing how ionizing radiation affects humans and what the results of that. So we have very strong evidence that radon is a human carcinogen that causes lung cancer. This is Pennsylvania. Now, the red areas, okay, are the areas that have a high potential of having elevated radon levels above 4. The orange levels is the medium potential that if you did a radon test, then it would have a medium potential of that. It doesn't mean the areas that are red and orange will always have elevated radon levels, but the probability of having that is very high. Remember we said at the beginning that about 40% of the radon tests where we measure a home or whatever come up above 4. So Pennsylvania is considered a zone 1 high radon elevated state. Remember we said, even that area yellow, that's Philadelphia. When I lived in Philadelphia about 4 years ago, we did radon testing there. We actually measured levels in the Philadelphia area. That yellow area, zone 3, doesn't mean that doesn't have any radon. We measured levels at 400, anywhere from 5 to 200 to 400 picocuries per liter just in that Philadelphia county. So, again, you want to be aware of what the map really says, okay? And as I already said, the next part is the ARS Radon Report Card. This is a card put together by the American Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists, the American Lung Association, and CDC, where they gather all the data that was being reported both to the Pennsylvania DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and to EPA. All that data has been gathered. And basically what we look at, the number of cancer cases that occurred, doesn't have to do anything with radon, is estimated to be, from all the data that comes in from the Department of Health, CDC, is about 10,805 lung cancer cases occur in Pennsylvania. Estimated radon-induced lung cancer cases in Pennsylvania is about 3,000 people with lung cancer cases. Now, if we go over at 35%, means that it's about 35 to 40% have, when we do a radon test, have levels above 4 picocuries per liter. Now we look at the housing units. This is a built environment. So you look at existing homes, which is not what our focus is, but you look at it's over 5 million existing buildings, okay, of 1 to 4 units. But the key one that we're focused on is public schools. Public schools, we have 2,947 public schools. So keep that in mind. With the 40% of built environment buildings in Pennsylvania that are tested, about 40% of them show radon levels above 4 picocuries per liter. Now, just to give you a little bit more information, this is pulled right from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection radon database that you can go onto the site, just Google, say, PADEP radon department, and it'll take you to there, and you can actually go to this website and look up, put your zip code in. It will give you the number of tests that have been done in that particular zip code. And I just want to note, this is not test data for schools, but this is the radon report test data that's reported to the state, since Pennsylvania requires anyone doing radon testing or radon mitigation to be licensed or certified and properly trained in order to do radon services in the state of Pennsylvania, okay? So if we look at, this is radon data then for Penn Hills Elementary School, that's in Allegheny County. The average radon level, the highest radon level measured, and this is basically around 2017 to 2014 is the range of that data, okay? Is they're looking at the maximum levels, 101.7 picocuries per liter. Remember, the action level is 4, and that was in the basement. On the first floor, okay, that could be 53.4 picocuries per liter. But the average is 5 picocuries per liter, and on the first floor is 3.9. That's in Allegheny County. If we go all the way over, say, to Lehigh County, and we look at that particular area, the highest level measured was basically 382.9 picocuries per liter, and the average was 17.5. This is actual data of test data that was reported to the state. So you can see, no matter what county we go to, we're going to find elevated radon levels. This is not for schools. This is generally for different buildings or whatever. No distinction between schools, residential properties, and things like that. Okay, just to give you a general idea that this is a serious issue. Even in Bucks County, the average is 8.1 picocuries per liter. Okay, just to give you a general idea. Remember, the action level is 4.0 picocuries per liter. So why am I going through all of this? So radon in schools. So we want to look at this. This is the EPA website that you can just Google, EPA radon, and EPA has a site that deals with radon in schools. This is what I recommend that everyone go to, especially school districts, just to see what the comments are, where basically EPA is saying that every school in the United States should be tested for radon. I'll read just one of these issues that EPA estimates that more than 70,000 schoolrooms in use today have high short-term radon levels. This is really probably made somewhere in the last 10 to 15 years. I'm not sure when they updated the website, but again, that's a serious number. And then you look at what the PTA said, the National PTA president, all schools must be tested to determine if there is a problem, and schools must inform parents of the results. We cannot ignore this problem, from the National PTA president at that time. Now, conclusions and logistics. Just follow me as we go through and convince you that radon is the reason why we're saying this is a call for action. It absolutely needs to be done. There's no doubt in the scientific and medical community that exposure to radioactive radon gas and its radioactive decay products can cause cancer or lung cancer in humans. Now, let's look at the real world in the schools, daycares that have asbestos. If I say asbestos, automatically we know that's bad. It gets in the lungs, it scars the tissue, it can cause mesothelioma, asbestosis, and lots of law companies and law firms you even see on TV, even now, advertising that if your husband or if your wife or someone working within the industry where asbestos may be, call us so we can now sue those people that made the materials or the school itself or the building itself that had that. So if we find a school with asbestos, then they are going to immediately shut down that school and mitigate it no matter what the cost. When I say asbestos, that's what's going to happen in the real world. Whether they have the money or not, that's going to be done. In a school daycare that has mold growing on the walls and ceiling, the school would be closed also. You see enough, news, at least a couple of years ago where they shut down schools over mold. And I think they just had a case not that long ago in the Allegheny County with the exact same results. And then let's deal with lead. Lead in the drinking water is a big deal, from all the old lead pipes and with the lead solder leaking into the actual water that our children drink. That is a potential health risk. It doesn't cause lung cancer, but it does cause, effects to the nervous system and to children's IQ. It's a big deal, along with lead-based paint. Again, that would also be addressed in schools. So if school daycares have an airborne radioactive gas seeping into the classrooms and the teacher's lounge, contaminating the indoor air being breathed, following this logistics, you would think that all schools, if we found elevated levels, the school will be shut down, be tested properly. Any school found with elevated radioactive radon gas in it would be shut down and mitigated immediately, where cost would not be the issue in the protection of the people in that built environment of that school, our children, our teachers, our support personnel in that school. So I'm going to get a little bit technical just so we understand what radioactivity is. So when radon decays, it gives off radioactive particles. Those particles, the ones that we are concerned about, are alpha particles. And when they're airborne, this is the worst type of ionizing radiation we have to be concerned about. Outside the body, if it's not airborne, the alpha particle can be stopped by a sheet of paper, but because it's airborne, I breathe it in. So I'm breathing in the radon gas with the radon decay products such as polonium-218, which is an alpha emitter. Okay, this sounds real technical. I've lost everybody. This is all wow, Nate. That looks impressive. Okay, but it doesn't activate anything where I'm scared, I'm concerned. I need to do something about this to protect myself and to protect my children. So let's take it a step further. How does ionizing radiation do harm? So you have these particles, coming off of the radon and the radon decay products, so this alpha radiation. This hit, because I'm breathing it in, the vector goes right into my lungs. So the radioactivity now is hitting the basal lung cells. The DNA that is in those cells, in the nucleolus or in the nucleus, this alpha radiation can hit it directly and actually break the DNA, what we call a double strand break, and that will either kill the cell outright, or the cell has the ability to repair itself and go back to normal, or it doesn't repair itself correctly and it mutates, creating a cancer cell. It doesn't happen every single time there's an alpha particle, but that probability goes up with more radon, more ionizing radiation that the human body is exposed to. That probability of turning a cell now into a cancer cell that now multiplies uncontrollably into a tumor. Okay, that can be a serious issue. And where the cancer is going to occur is not on our skin, even not necessarily in our organs, but in our lungs. So now we have the potential in breathing in radon, causing that damage that would cause the cell to go cancerous. I now have lung cancer. Just to give you a general idea what this invisible radiation does. Now, the challenge for me, I still haven't gotten you excited yet. So I'm going to go one more step further. This is an actual cloud chamber. This is a special chamber with alcohol and dry ice, number one. And this is actually, they built this right in a house. And what they found in this particular house in Pennsylvania, the radon levels that were tested were 100 picocuries per liter. What you are looking at in there as you breathe in, this is what you're breathing in, that invisible gas, but those little streaks are like bullets. Okay, that's the alpha radiation that is coming from 100 picocuries per liter. Okay, so that's in 1 liter of air. So normal respiration rate for an adult at rest is 12 to 20 breaths per minute at rest. So every time you breathe in, this is what's happening inside your lungs. These little bullets are hitting your lung cells directly, causing potential damage. The more bullets, sooner or later, it's going to hit that target of the DNA and cause a potential problem where that cell can now become damaged. The DNA gets a double strand break, and now that cell becomes cancerous. That's the big deal. Now, on we go. Normal respiration rate for a preschooler is about 22 to 34 breaths per minute, and even faster when playing compared to adults. Normal respiration rate for a school age is 18 to 30 breaths per minute. Children are more susceptible to radiation damage than adults. This, you sort of heard about before because they're growing up more. They're growing up, they have a higher cell multiplication. You got a lot of different things that deal with chemicals, imbalance in the body. Okay, children spend 1,000 hours in a preschool built environment. This was something that Women for Healthy Environment, a nonprofit organization in the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia area, did a major report on, which we'll talk about later. Many schools in PA have elevated high radon levels, but a lot of schools have not been tested for this. So you would think showing this was actually happening in a room with 100 picocuries per liter. Those are the actual alpha radiation bullets that are in the air. And when I breathe in, that's what's happening inside your lungs. So the other thing I want to point out with lung cancer is that normally when it's diagnosed, it's usually diagnosed in the later stages. One, the general x-ray a lot of times can miss this. So a lot of times they'll do a low CT scan. So ideally, you would think that everybody in a high radon state, especially with high radon levels, you may want to do a low dose CT scan to determine whether you have any impact to your lungs that particularly could be leading toward lung cancer. Again, remember that lung cancer is usually diagnosed in the later stages, stage 3 and stage 4. The survival rate after you are diagnosed with lung cancer or stage 4, it's very low. That's the point that I want to point out. Just add that to the fact that this is something that even if you have stage 2, there may not be any symptoms. I have a friend of mine, Jackie Nixon from CR3, Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction, actually was diagnosed stage 1, and she was very blessed where the doctor wanted to do that. She had a slight cough. I just wanted to be sure. She did a follow-up, and she was diagnosed with stage 1 lung cancer. Actually had part of her lungs removed. And there weren't any really major clear signs. That was just a caution, a very cautious doctor, along with God's guidance, Jackie will tell you. And you've probably seen during January with the Pennsylvania DEP, a video or a commercial with Jackie, who's an African-American woman, talking about her lung cancer that she believes was caused by exposure to radon. And she's recommending that everyone do a radon test in Pennsylvania. Now, the other thing I want to point out, just to let you know that we have lung cancer, but there's a big increase in blood cancers among children. This is just one of the studies that's been done. This is an old study, okay? I think this is 1998 when this was done. But this is case control study of childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia and residential radon exposure. So they're looking at children. Remember, when I breathe in that radon, there is a potential chance if I breathe hard enough that I could get some blood gas absorption. Now I have that ionizing radiation directly into the bloodstream that potentially could cause, and this is something that's not fully proven, but these are studies that are out there showing some correlation, some concern that exposure to radon, along with, again, childhood acute leukemia, could be related to residential radon. And think about schools now, okay, also. So radon, okay, number one, is that a priority for your school district and preschool? That is my point. This is a direct quote from EPA. For most school children, staff, teachers, and essential personnel, the second largest contributor to their radon exposure is likely to be their school preschool environment. Think on that for a minute, okay? So that's a serious issue. And some people say, well, my school doesn't have a basement, so I don't have a radon problem. If your school touches the ground, okay, then you potentially could have a radon. The radon is a soil gas, or radioactive soil gas, that can come up into buildings through different pressure differentials and other mechanisms. So every school in the state of Pennsylvania and other states has that potential of having elevated radon levels. The only way that you're going to know that you do or don't have an elevated radon level is to do radon testing, and it has to be done for the whole school. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Now, this is the Women for a Healthy Environment. They did an actual report where they sent out an inquiry for all the schools in Pennsylvania. And from the replies, they didn't get replies from everybody, but they found that basically school districts who tested for radon in at least one school building. So you look in the area of Allegheny County, about 41% of the schools, when they sent this inquiry had done radon testing. And then you look at some of the other areas, and you notice as we get into the rural areas where Erie and other areas such as Pennsylvania, it's very low. So you look at the other infographic that's right here, the gray one, 20% tested for radon for the ones that did respond to the Women for Healthy Environment studies. A very good report that I strongly recommend that you read. I think I gave the URL here. Everyone, I've given permission to Cancer Bridges to release this PowerPoint to anyone that wants this PowerPoint, so everyone can get a copy of this particular presentation. But 20% tested for radon, and then 38% of those who did test it found elevated radon levels above 4 picocuries per liter. It also looked at other health risks such as lead-based paint and a lot of other issues that may be there. Okay, now, radon in schools, just a brief overview of radon school laws and regulations in each state. Colorado has something, Florida, Connecticut, Illinois. In New Jersey, for instance, still all schools have not been tested for radon, but they do have a particular thing that all daycare preschool centers, in order to get their license, have to be tested for radon. And if the radon levels are above 4, then those particular preschool nurseries or daycares have to be mitigated to reduce the radon levels down to below 4. That's happening in New Jersey. There's a few other states that have very similar ones: Florida, Rhode Island, Oregon, New York, Virginia. But even with this, still, there are a lot of schools that have not been tested for radon, even in these states that do require that. Again, this is just something to look at. Now, childcare preschool centers. About 6,800 licensed childcare providers were operating in Pennsylvania as of late November 2021. Now, if we look at the facilities, the daycare places like KinderCare and things like that, but also there are, especially I think in talking with Women for Healthy Environment in Philadelphia with Lorna, basically you have houses that do daycare and preschool care for that. You know, a lot of them are registered, some of them are not. We have to look at those houses along with the preschool. If it touches the ground, there's a potential that radon could be elevated in those daycare preschool facilities. I've done radon testing and radon mitigation in several different daycare centers that we found elevated radon levels significantly over 4 picocuries per liter. I think one particular daycare center we measured was over 50 picocuries per liter. And the kids sleep on the floor and on these mats, okay, where obviously on the ground contact area, that could be a big deal. A lot of the house residential daycare may even be in the basement where they may have children or infants or different things like that, just for preschool. Therefore, this becomes a concern that as a parent, I would want to know in the preschool, does this preschool have elevated radon levels that are causing a radioactive gas that my child, my infant, could breathe in? On we go. Now, recommended, hopefully I'm being able to start to convince you that this is a serious problem, and this is why we have a call for action. There are tools that EPA has. One of the best tools that's really a valuable tool that I think every school district should go by, and this is one of the things that several school districts that asked me to do a training on the tools for schools for indoor air quality. This is free. It's a preventative maintenance guidance that's probably a very valuable document for any school district, any daycare center, any preschool facility, and even higher learning universities and areas like that, where you may want, you really may want to use this as a guidance on improvement of indoor air quality. Now, if we have to do radon testing in a school, basically there are standards that we go by. These are the ANSI standards, the American National Standards Institute, and ARS, the American Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists. Each one of these are the 3 standards that are applied to schools. One is radon measurements in schools and large buildings. Basically, it means that all ground contact occupied rooms, even for 4 hours, has to be tested. So if you've got a school with 50 or 75 school classrooms, each one of those rooms has to be tested under specific conditions. All the windows and doors have to be kept closed. And ideally, this should be done in the colder months, not in the summer or the warmer months, where it's going to be very hard to implement closed house building conditions. And then we have guidance on how, if we do find elevated radon levels, how do we mitigate and reduce those radon levels in a school? And this is where school districts and architects should be using these standards when they're considering doing radon testing for their schools. And then the other one is, think about this. I was just talking to a school district, they're planning to build a new school. Now, if there's a new school being built, every school that's being built is being planned or whatever in the state of Pennsylvania or any other state should have radon resistant new construction built into it. One, it's a lot cheaper to build that into the school. That makes it less likely to have elevated radon levels, and it's anywhere from 10 to 50 times cheaper to do radon resistant new construction right into the school design than waiting till after the school is built and then trying to mitigate it. So these are the guidance that everyone should be using, architects, school districts. Again, I do training courses on all three of these particular standards. I actually sit on the 2 of these standards and actually helping write the actual ANSI standards as one of the committee members. On we go. There's other guidance also. Say for Oregon, that was one of the schools we mentioned before, they actually have a guidance document that could be used in Pennsylvania or other states, testing for elevated radon levels in Oregon schools. Our school radon mitigation plan. This is from another state, in Iowa, for instance. On we go. Now, if I can do this, the Rosin report. This was an interesting report, February the 28th, 2012, where this is ABC. I'm sure if you watch ABC, you've seen the Rosin reports about all kinds of different areas where they do an investigation on a particular matter of interest to the public. So this is in 2012, quite a ways ago. Their idea, they were going to offer free radon test kits to every school district that wanted to do radon testing. So they called all these different school districts, hey, we're going to pay for and give you the radon test kits and do this. So they went to 40 schools. Guess what? All 40 schools, even the ones that initially said, yeah, I want to do it, changed their mind and refused the radon test. In order to protect their children, they refused that. And I'll skip the video, but you can actually Google the Rosin report for radon in schools, and it'll take you to that. I don't think we have a lot of time to play that, but it is gripping to listen to this video to talk about a radioactive radon gas that is seeping into your schools with children, and no one is concerned about it. Okay, it's not a big deal. And that was 2012. So that's a big deal. You really haven't seen that much interest about radon in schools. Okay, not a lot of stuff about this. Again, this is another one. It seems very busy. This is dealing with the built environment. But again, kids aren't just being exposed in schools. What I'm trying to get at for built environment, that's residential homes, that's apartment buildings, that's schools, that's preschool facilities, that's churches. All those different things there are the different built environments, and each one of those is a potential radon exposure, okay, event. Therefore, the one that I want to pay attention is the red one with the white text. Bottom line, children have the potential of radon accumulative exposure in all built environments, not just schools and preschools, but the home, worship, gyms, theaters, etc. So this is a big deal that all schools, preschool facilities, homes should be tested for radon gas to protect our children, teachers, and personnel working in the school built environment. That's the thing that I'm trying to get across here. Again, is the risk real enough, okay, for you to take action? It's about action. I just don't want to do an information type presentation. Oh, this is what radon is, could be in your schools, see you later, and then you never hear about this ever again. This should be something that hopefully we would like you to take a call for action and do something, go to your legislators, both state and federal, to demand that schools be tested for radon, okay? Radon testing should be part of any health and safety school program budget for every school in Pennsylvania and the US. Remember, they're breathing it in into their lungs. These are the children with lungs that we are concerned about, and it's preventable. Again, putting your head in the sand. If I don't know about it, that's what the Rosin report says. When they offered to do free radon testing, every school district turned it down with the idea, if I don't know about it, I don't have to do anything about it. I got, who's going to pay for it? That's one more thing I got to worry about in this world of COVID and everything else. And this is done way before COVID in 2012, okay? So we don't want to put our heads in the sand. In fact, radon comes from the ground, so these people are getting a heavy dose of radon exposure, all right? So, call to action. All schools and preschool buildings should be tested for radon in the US every 5 years, even with low radon levels. This is a recommendation by EPA and by a lot of state radon programs. Testing during the colder months for your climate zone. So I don't want to do the test in the summertime, and I actually want to do the test when the school is in an operating condition, not when the school is empty. So a lot of times schools will want to do the test during spring break or over Christmas or over Thanksgiving. Wrong time to do the testing. You want to do the testing when the building, the air conditioning, everything is built for, when the school is occupied. This radon report, the radon report for each school should be available to the parents, teachers, and the public. If the elevated radon levels are found, then the school preschool should be mitigated to reduce the radon levels following the ANSI-R standards that I showed before, as recommended by EPA. Now, these schools with mitigation systems, there are several school districts. I know there's a lot of school districts that have been mitigated with actual radon mitigation systems in there. And the problem is these schools, radon mitigation systems should be retested every 2 years. Well, Nate, how long do I have to do this? As long as that system is there, and long as there's elevated radon levels, this now becomes an intimate part for every school district. If you have an elevated school with elevated radon levels, that school needs to be tested every 2 years. Period, as part of an operation and maintenance program to ensure that the mitigation system is being effective in reducing the radon levels down to below the action level. New schools or preschool facilities should be built with radon resistant new construction, can be 10 to 20 times cheaper than after the building is built, okay? That's the big deal. The benefits, even very quickly, if I do put one of these systems in, just putting it what we call an active soil depressurization radon mitigation system not only removes the radioactive radon soil gas, but it removes a significant amount of moisture underneath the ground, thus reducing conducive conditions for mold and other issues. It actually improves the overall indoor air quality as a very economical way of making that school safer on an IAQ or indoor air quality level. So that is the big deal that I want you to look at there. Now, this is all great, Nate, and this is where I get politicians, but who's going to pay for all of this? Estimated PA schools and daycares is about that. For public schools, is estimated from some mitigators and a meeting with the American Lung Association with Kevin Stewart, we came around to about 22 the $24 million just for public schools. Now, if we multiply that, so like 40 million, that would also include the non-private schools and all the other areas for preschool and for public schools and for children that are potentially being exposed to radon. The only way you're going to know that is to test any schools that do have elevated radon levels. The estimated cost just for Pennsylvania should be for about anywhere from 22 to 40 million dollars. That's really not much in preserving, okay, the safety, the health safety, and air quality of that school from a radioactive gas seeping into that building. And think about this, a lot cheaper to do this than you look at the medical care for a child that has childhood leukemia or lung cancer. Again, the cost for someone with lung cancer could easily be $100,000 for the time that they're diagnosed with it till the time that they die, and the care that is needed, whether it's chemotherapy or it's radiation, along with other medical care, you could significantly reduce, just in Pennsylvania, over close to probably $500 million of medical impact care if we looked at testing all school buildings with that. And the other benefit for that, usually when you test schools, you start getting parents and everyone aware of this, they usually start testing their homes also. So you actually increase the amount of radon testing, not only in schools, but in other built environments also. So where is the money coming from? We have the American CARES Act, and we have funding for COVID-19 response. Now, if you look at Section P, inspection, testing, and maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects to improve the indoor air quality in school facilities, including mechanical and non-mechanical heating, ventilation, and the air conditioning system, filtering, purification, and other air cleaning fans, blah, blah, blah. So there is money available. Someone said that a lot of this money is gone, but there's other things here. There is also one for elementary schools and high schools funding called the ESSER funds, ESSER funds and facilities. So there's other money that is available, just to give you a little bit of an idea where particular funding sources can be for school districts that feel they cannot afford to do radon testing. Okay, again, there are several paths for funding that's called for action to prevent radioactive radon gas in schools, public and private. Radon testing should be part of any health and safety school program budget for every school in Pennsylvania and the US. Almost done here. Now, protect your children is the goal. Test your home for radon. Again, I can't estimate this. It's simply not in our minds. It's invisible. We don't know that it's there. So it's not a critical thing there, except when in real estate, I may do a radon test when I buy a house. What about all the houses that are not being sold? What about all the built environments, the workplaces, the schools, the churches, the daycare centers? All this. This should be a state and federal mandate. So you need to talk to your representatives and your senators, both state and federal, about this. Bring this to their attention. We're just starting to do that with Women for a Healthy Environment and other nonprofits and other personal people going and meeting with their representatives for that. Talk to your legislators, senators, and representatives. Getting ABC Rosin report, this is one of the things I'm pursuing, to do another investigation piece on radon in schools. I am approaching them now. Working with the American Lung Association, this is another project that I am doing now, and actually working with school districts and training their personnel to do the radon testing where it could be significantly cheaper. And we've done this for several school districts. We will be available for any school district, any preschool, any higher learning school to do this exact same type of training. I'm available to present to any school district, PTAs, preschools, along with the assistant training and oversight for radon testing. My email address is there, and anything that I can do, please let me know. Now, have I convinced you that this should be a call for action for the protection of our children? That's it. Thank you for the privilege of presenting this to you.
Wow, thanks, Nate. Yeah, you always convince me. It's great information, and I have some questions here. If maybe we could just go through them. I know we're at 12:59 and we're till 1, so if you have to jump off, anybody, thanks, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask as many of these as I can. Is that all right, Nate?
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about this, but Brittany's asking, are there grants that would support testing and mitigation of radon in schools and also for daycares? So thank
There
you.
could be grants there that could be applied, but that means somebody has to recognize that, take that on as something that you would approach a grant foundation like the Pew Foundation or like the Heinz Foundation or whatever, and bring that to their attention. A lot of nonprofits such as Women for Healthy Environment, the American Lung Association do have grants like that. So I would talk to them for that. Okay. And besides talking to your state representatives and senators that can be instrumental in pointing out funding for this. Okay. So there is a pathway for that.
I was curious myself. I know you pointed to that one EPA website, Radon in Schools, but is there a place that one can go and look up their own school district to see if they've tested? And if not, how do you approach your own school district about that?
Okay, no, there is no particular site that you can go and look at that. I remember that was one of the mandates that I said that every school should be able to, to basically have that available to the public, teachers, and whoever else wants to look at that. And that should be a demand. So if the parents aren't making that demand, then that's not going to happen. But when every single parent, every single teacher says, I want to know, does the school have elevated radon levels? If it's a daycare center, I want to know, does this building where my children are spending time at, does it have elevated radon levels? I want to see the radon report. So no, that's not there. There are, like I said, as I said before, Women for Healthy Environment did a major investigative report survey where they did spend some time and even helped with a grant with Women for Healthy Environment that you may want to give a call. They're located both in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. They do have grant access with some nonprofits that can do that. Also, we're working with Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh and Habitat for Humanity.
If you did want to just approach your own school district, what would you recommend parents? Who would they go to? I mean, imagine if you call the principal of a school and ask them.
I would go to the principal first, okay, and then to the school district administrator. Okay. And I would not only approach them with a phone call, but a written letter. Most school districts and people, even government, even state governments have to respond to a letter. So, hey, I'm a concerned parent. I want to know, since radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer and children are more susceptible to low-level ionizing radiation, has your school tested for radon? When did they test? Can I see a copy of that report? So that would be the thing that I would do for every single school district, every single daycare center.
Are short-term radon tests with charcoal recommended for use? Are they accurate enough as opposed to a continuous radon monitor? The short-term tests are easier to implement and require almost no technical experience, but are they recommended?
Yes, they are recommended. That's basically the most economical way, is to choose a radon test kit that is approved by your state and by the national organization of a qualified radon test kit. Again, you can buy those online from Amazon or directly from the manufacturer, such as there's a couple of them, RTCA and AccuStar are some of the actual radon test kit manufacturers. So you can buy the test kits. They are done accurately because there's a lot of quality assurance, a lot of follow-up to ensure that the detectors are accurate. The only concern would be that if you're buying them from a store, you want to make sure it's really no more than a year to 2 years old, because there's a shelf life associated with that detector. Okay, again, I would recommend buying them directly from the manufacturer or even from online is there's a lot of different sources there, but it is an easy test that can be done. And because you do one test, doesn't mean that you have a radon level, say, of 3.9 picocurious per liter. Well, it's below 4, I'm safe. No, remember I said before, even at levels below 4 picocurious per liter, you still can get the risk of radon-induced lung cancer. So the ideal here, you want to test really, maybe in the wintertime, and then do another test again the next winter. Okay, so you follow up on that. Just because houses settle and you put in a plumbing system or a French drain system, or you put something in or change the HVAC or your air conditioning system, then you want to do another radon test because it could change significantly by just those different types of situations.
Okay, I know we're 5 after. I just want to point out to everybody that there's some good resources. Dana put oh geez, where is it, Dana? Sorry, that you can sign up for the letter that's already there's a template for it for the schools. So that's really great. And also Women for Healthy Environment has a program called 1,000 Hours. They can provide limited funding. There's a link for that. And Ned also put a link about an upcoming air monitoring cohort beginning next week for people interested in monitoring air quality and radon in and around the home. So there's some really great resources in the chat. If you click on them and bookmark them and look at them later. Also, Andre is going to be sending out the PowerPoint to everybody in a separate email later this afternoon. So, oh, one more question. If radon levels are found at or below 2
picocuries per liter.
Do you recommend mitigation?
No, the concern is this is a personal question. Now, if you have a history of lung cancer in your family, I've had people basically hire me or hire another mitigation company to get the levels down to as low as reasonably achievable. That's an acronym of ALERA. In the radiation industry, we want to get the levels, the exposure levels as low as reasonably achievable. So right now, the mandate is 4 picocuries per liter. So I don't want to confuse that issue. But because it's 3 picocuries per liter does not mean that you're safe. That's a call on you that if you do want to, say, do a mitigation system, and we didn't really talk that much about it because there's so much to cover, but the mitigation system, say, for a residential property can range anywhere from about $1,000 to about $1,800 in general for a radon mitigation. So that's something that will be a call, but right now the action level was 4. Anything 4 or higher, EPA and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection recommend that it should be mitigated. Now, the other thing that EPA says in their documentation, between 2 and 4 picocuries per liter, radon mitigation should be considered. And the last statement I want to make is, again, the point of this as a call for action, I don't want this to disappear. I will be available, but we want you to follow up as an individual for your family, for your community, for your state, is to follow up on radon in schools. Again, work with some of the nonprofits, especially for Women for Healthy Environment, which I do work with, and we are actively pursuing both political awareness and getting involvement there, but also there are bills that are out there now that hopefully we're getting actual people to sponsor those bills to mandate radon testing in schools and preschool areas in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you, Nate. As I said, we will get the PowerPoint out, and we are planning some webinars, one on pesticide and one on fracking in the area. So stay tuned for dates on those. Hopefully we'll get that out pretty soon. But thank you everybody for the time today, and thank you for spending a few extra minutes. Right.